Our next topic is business connectivity service. The overall objective of business connectivity service in SharePoint is to pull data, is to fetch data or to retrieve data from some external sources. When I say external sources, which means you might have some data in your Oracle database, you might have some data in your SQL database, or probably in SAP system or anywhere outside SharePoint. And you want to use that data in your SharePoint, probably in your SharePoint list, or probably on your SharePoint pages using different web parts. Okay, so that's the objective which you want to achieve. And in order to achieve that objective, we have business connectivity service in SharePoint. Once again, this is a service, which means if you want to use this service in SharePoint, then your SharePoint farm administrator will first configure and create this particular service in SharePoint environment. Once it is created, then you will be able to use this service in SharePoint and bring data into SharePoint from external resources. Once again, in these labs, this particular service is already configured. So we can use this service to bring some data into SharePoint. You will be required to create an external connection, and we can create this external connection using SharePoint Designer, which means we can use SharePoint Designer tool in order to create or establish connection with external database, and this SharePoint Designer will facilitate us for creating external content type. Okay, this external content type is required for this service, business connectivity service. And again, you can create this external content type using SharePoint Designer. There are some limitations of SharePoint Designer while you and I will explain those while we will be creating external content type. However, it is one of the easiest way and one of the easiest tool to create external content types. In external content type, we can define our database operations, which means while we will be creating external content type, we can specify that we want to read data, we want to delete data, we want to insert data, we want to update data. Okay, these are the different kind of operations which we can specify in external content type using SharePoint Designer. Once this external content type is created, then we upload this external content type inside this business connectivity service. Once again, SharePoint Designer will perform this job for us. Okay, it will automatically upload external content type inside this business connectivity service. Once this external content type is uploaded in business connectivity services, then we can consume that information in SharePoint, which means we can create a very special kind of list in SharePoint, which is known as external list. The entire purpose of this external list is to communicate with business connectivity service and show data according to this external content type. Okay, when I say external list, which means a list provides you multiple options. By using a list, you can add data, you can update data, you can delete data, and list is also capable to display the data to users. Okay, but this is the external list. So we will be watching, or we will be viewing data which will be coming from external data sources, from some SQL database, for example. Okay, so we will see that how we can create external list. You can create external list using SharePoint, or you can create external list using SharePoint Designer. Okay, so next I will show you that how we can create external content type using SharePoint Designer. Before creating external content type, let me tell you that we have SQL Server available in this SharePoint environment, because every data, every single content of SharePoint is also saved in SQL Server database. So we have a database in this environment, and we will access that database in order to fetch some information into SharePoint. Let me show you a database. There is a database. This is my SQL Server. You will not be required to perform these steps. I'm just showing you. Because this will be the database that we will fetch in SharePoint environment. Okay, this is the server name, SP Server 2013. This is the server name. If I connect to this server, if I expand the databases, then we have a database named Northwind. Okay, I will use this particular database to retrieve some data into SharePoint. In this database, we have multiple tables. Okay, these are the different kind of tables available in this database. Let's say I will use this employees table to retrieve some data in SharePoint. Okay, so next, go back to SharePoint. Go back to our site. In this site, I will show you how we can create external content type. As I said, that we can create external content types using SharePoint Designer. So my SharePoint Designer was already open. So I just switched to SharePoint Designer. Inside the SharePoint Designer, you will find on this left side, under this navigation, under this site objects, okay, you will find external content types. So if I click on it, now it says, let's say, building the external content types report. Okay, and it says there are no items to show in this view. Secondly, on the top left, you will find this external content type, and this is clickable item, which means I can click on it. For example, if you open SharePoint Designer and you click on external content types, so instead of viewing this message, there are no items to show in this view, you find some error message over here. Or when you move your mouse on this external content type, that option is not enabled, which means the business connectivity service is not available in this environment. You will have to ask your SharePoint administrator to provide business connectivity service first. Okay, so in this environment, business connectivity service is available. That is why this option is enabled. So in order to create a new external content types, I will click on external content type button. Okay, so on this particular screen, I will perform some of the configuration. Number one, I'm supposed to define a name for my external content type. Okay, so let's say if I click on new external content type, so I can change it. For example, north wind, or let me call it employees info, for example. Okay, whatever name you like, you can specify any name. Okay, then you will select this option, external system. So just in front of this external system text, click here to discover external data sources. So you just simply click here. Okay, so you will move on this particular screen. On this screen, first you will establish a connection with that database. Okay, so I will click on add connection. What is my data source type? I will select SQL Server because that is my data source. And now here is the restriction. SharePoint Designer only knows SQL Server directly. It doesn't know anything about Oracle, about MySQL or any other database. That's the shortcoming or limitation of SharePoint Designer. So in this case, I will click on SQL Server. Okay, then click on OK. So my database server name is SP Server 2013. This was my database server name. My database name was Northwind. Okay, and I will simply click on OK. So it will try to connect with that database. If all the credentials are correct, and database server also allows you to connect with that particular database, then you will find your database is accessible. Okay, if I expand this database, inside this database, I have these different objects, let's say the tables, the views, or routines. So I will expand the tables. Inside the tables, these are the different tables I have in this database. So I wanted to access, let's say, employees table. Okay, let's say I want to get in employees information in my SharePoint site. So I will select this employees table. I will simply right click on it. And these are the different operations. Which operations I want to create on this table. Let's say I want to create all the operation. All operations means all the read operations. Create operation means the insert operation to add new record, to update existing record, to delete any record. Okay, so these are the operations that I want to create. So rather than clicking one by one, I can select create all operations. Okay, operations properties. Let's say on this screen, I will simply click on next. On this particular screen, you will select which columns you want to retrieve in SharePoint. Okay, so for example, I want to retrieve the employee ID, first name, the last name, the title. Let's say I'm not interested in hire date, or not interested in address, or probably the home page, the extension, the photo, the notes, the reports to, photo path. I'm not interested in these different information. Okay, so I selected information which I needed. So I simply click on next. Okay, on this screen, once again, I do not want to create any parameterized function. I will show you what are these parameterized functions, and we will create the parameterized filter or the parameterized function at later stage. So let me click on finish. Now my external content type is ready. Okay, it is created. The next step was to upload this external content type in business connectivity service. So in order to upload this service, you will simply save this content type. Okay, just click on save. SharePoint Designer will automatically contact the business data connectivity service, and it will automatically upload the service in SharePoint. Once it is loaded, now the next step is to use this data in our site. There are multiple ways of using this data. The first way is to create or is to use external list, as I mentioned on our presentation. Let's say if I come to my site, oh, let me close this browser. Okay, so I'm in my site, and in this site, I will create a new list. Now to create a new list, I will go to settings and add an app. This time I will select a very specific app or a very specific list, external list. Okay, let me name it employees, for example. The second thing, I will specify the data source for this list. Okay, which means it requires an external content type. So I will simply browse. I will click on browse, and it will automatically connect. It will automatically contact to respective business connectivity service. And just because I published or uploaded my external content type using the SharePoint Designer, so that content type is available in the service. Okay, so I want to use this employee info content type. So I selected it, and I simply click on OK, and I create the list. Okay, so the list is created. So if I click on this list, so it will fetch the data from that table. Okay, we have all those options. For example, I can click on new item and I can add data. I can update any existing item. Okay, so for example, if I click on edit item, so there will be a form. In this form, I can upload the data. I can change the data. I can modify my data. Okay, so this is the use of external content type. By using the external content types, you can simply fetch data from external systems, and you can use that data in SharePoint. By the way, this is one usage, which means we can use that data in external list. But there are some other ways as well. For example, we have this list. I want to create a column in this list However, I want to connect that column with my external content type, which means I want to bring some data from external source in SharePoint. Okay, so what I will do, or what I can do, I can go to list, create column. Let's say uh, my my column name is employee, and there is a type of data, external data, which means I can specify that this column will be the type of external data. So I can select the external data. Again, I will browse my external data. Okay, I want to use this external content type. Okay, so now there are multiple columns available. Which column I want to use? Let's say I want to use the first name. Okay, so now I have a list. In this list, I have a column which is connected with the external source. So if I simply, for example, edit this item, and if I want to specify an employee in this record, so what I can do, I can simply browse, and these are the different employees. So for example, I want to add this employee, or I want to assign this employee to this record. Okay, or while you will be adding a new item, so you can specify any first name of employee by using your external content type. Okay, so this is the use of external content types in SharePoint. You can bring data in SharePoint from external resources.